Welcome to our second special STORE2019 edition of the Voice of Retail podcast. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, and this podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada and sponsored by Purolator, Canada's shipping company for courier and freight. Learn more at purolator.com. Retail Council of Canada's STORE Conference is the biggest retail conference of the year in Canada, and for 2019, in partnership with my friends at Purolator, we built the Purolator Podcasting Studio and set out to interview some of the most interesting people in retail. We also followed up with a few folks who we met at STORE2019, but our schedules didn't quite line up to get them into the studio during the action-packed day and a half. Let's kick off this second STORE episode, starting with my exclusive interview with Steve Dennis, President and Founder, SageBerry Consulting, and the STORE Day 2 opening keynote. Steve has been named a top 5 global retail influencer by 2 leading organizations, and his thoughts on the future of shopping are regularly shared in the media and in his role as a contributor for Forbes. Steve has worked with dozens of retail, luxury, and social impact brands to inspire, catalyze, and design their journey from boring to remarkable. Next, a great conversation with Lara Wood, General Manager of Cannabis New Brunswick, talking about her rich background, their award-winning development program, the innovative go-to-market structure of Cannabis NB, and how the province embraced the retail cannabis opportunity. Then I followed up with Lori West, Director of Retail for Purolator, after they were big winners last Tuesday night at the Excellence in Retail Awards in the pop-up retail category. I wanted to know how their innovative mobile quick stop truck concept came about and advice for retailers as we look towards the 2019 holiday season. Top of mind stuff for retailers across the nation as we sit here in June. Let's get started now with Steve Dennis. Steve, welcome to the Voice of Retail in the Purolator Podcast Studio here at Retail Council of Canada STORE2019. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're all looking forward to your session tomorrow morning. You're kicking off tomorrow morning. But in the meantime, between now and then, just want to get to a little bit of background about yourself. Tell us about how you got to where you are today. What's your career in retail? Tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, it's been kind of a long and winding road. First few years out of business school, I was doing some other things. I ended up joining Sears about, I guess, over 25 years ago, and spent about 12 years there in a whole bunch of different roles, running a business, marketing, finance, strategy, M&A. Left there to join Neiman Marcus as their first chief strategy officer, and subsequently got into overseeing their loyalty strategy, credit card business, what we called at the time multi-channel marketing. And then about 10 years ago, I went off on my own, and originally thought I would do primarily strategy consulting, and it's just morphed over the years in that I'm still doing that. But I started writing a blog, which evolved into writing for Forbes, which led to doing speaking, and now I'm writing a book, and just a whole bunch of other things. So it's been kind of an interesting mix, but all pretty much around where retail is going, driving innovation, that sort of stuff.
You travel the world. It's a great way to share such a vast knowledge. I mean, chief strategy officer. Tell me about what that role entails. What do you actually do as a chief strategy officer for a big retailer?
Well, there's what you're supposed to do and what actually happens. I've been chief strategy officer at 2 retailers. In both cases, I think the intent was to really drive the long-term growth agenda for the company and figure out how to make that happen. So it involved industry insights, customer insights, and trying to sort that out with what the company was good at or could become good at. In a lot of cases, I feel it's kind of a thankless job because, it's part of what I'll talk about tomorrow is I think so many retailers have basically watched the last 20 years happen to them. And so even if, and I certainly didn't have all the answers, or my team didn't have all the answers, but even if we kind of see where things are going, a lot of times it's really hard to get retailers, particularly the big retailers, traditional retailers, to see it and get them to take action. So in theory, it's about driving that change. In practice, I found it to be often pretty frustrating because it's hard to get big organizations to make those changes.
You know what I love about your writing is it's infused with the knowledge of actually doing the job.
Yeah.
And it's brutally frank, without being mean. I find...
Well, I have my moments. But.
I mean, some of your quotes are legend, In other news, I set fire to a big pile of cash. When you see retailers, and this is kind of a good segue into talking about what you're talking about, continuing to invest in the same strategy over and over again and thinking more is better.
Yeah.
But I think, one of your things is more is just more. It's not better.
Yeah.
And talk about you talk about it in the boring middle.
Yeah.
And give me a frame for that.
Well, a couple things. I mean, I think, change is really hard. what I try to do with my writing and my speaking is to try to elevate what I think are some, at least from my perspective, some truths, and give ways for people to think about it and guide them forward. One of the things I think is a bit unique about my background compared to some consultants is I have been on both. I sometimes refer to myself as like part architect, part builder, right? So because I've designed stuff, but I've designed it hopefully in a way that it can actually be built.
Right.
And I've been on the other side of having to implement what other people's built. So I think it's hopefully a useful perspective.
And that's what I appreciate the most about your commentary. Is it, from my perspective, it clearly is infused with, okay, I actually have to deliver this stuff. So
I try to make it pragmatic. I mean, the other advantage I have, I guess, it's both a disadvantage and an advantage, is a lot of consultants that are writing and speaking work for large companies, and the advantage of that is they have legions of people to help them do their stuff, and they have all sorts of original research to leverage. But a lot of times, and I appreciate a lot of the work, and I quote a lot of their work, a lot of times they have to pull their punches because they have a lot of clients that they don't want to offend, or clients they're trying to land that they don't want to necessarily pick on. And, I wish I had that many clients, but, I have the advantage of being able, I think, to call balls and strikes as I see them. So that's another, I think, perspective. But, talking about the boring middle, I think, a lot of what's happened, and I'll talk about tomorrow, is number one, a lot of businesses were really built, or a lot of retail businesses over the years were built on scarcity. You had the only store in town, or you had exclusive product, or the salesperson had more information than the customer did, and what have you. And the internet largely has made scarcity go away. And the result of that is that good enough no longer is. And so it really puts the pressure on retailers when the customer can buy anything they want from just about anywhere in the world, have not necessarily perfect information, but lots of information about pricing and products and competition and who's open and what can I get in 2 hours or what have you. It puts so much pressure on retailers to be that much better. And I think what we're seeing is that the middle market, either the folks that aren't either the best price or the most convenient, or on the other end, aren't the most special, either through unique product or premium service or whatever it might be. Those ends of the spectrum are winning, but the middle is collapsing. What I call the mediocre, boring middle. And change is happening more quickly. There's a whole bunch of other things that people talk about all the time. But I don't know that there's much appreciation for how much the middle of the market is collapsing. It's not that physical retail per se is dead, but the boring middle of physical retail absolutely is dead. And that's where you see almost all the store closings and bankruptcies.
And you and I have been, I travel and speak as well, and we've been aligned on there is no retail apocalypse, because retail, if you look at the numbers in the U.S. are, some of those numbers are fantastic, right? Some of the best numbers. Walmart just posted some of the best numbers they've had in comp stores in like 9 years, right? So this is this paradox where you see success, but success is not, and increasingly not, equal. It's not shared equally.
Yeah, I don't have it in tomorrow's talk, but I often include this quote from William Gibbons about the future is not evenly distributed.
Right.
And, what we see in retail, which, has always been true, it's just, greatly amplified now, is shift continues to happen. People go out of business. Yeah. Other new concepts emerge. But, if you were in the book business, if you were Borders or Barnes & Noble, Walden Books, a whole bunch of Chapters, but a whole bunch of the other companies, it's been pretty apocalyptic, right?
Yeah.
Because, you're out of business or almost out of business. But there's plenty of parts where physical retail and other retail is thriving, absolutely.
Well, and in fact, you called out Indigo, who just, good Canadian retailer, great Canadian new retailer, just opened up in the U.S. with this, what they call their cultural department store, right? It's more than a bookstore. It has got to be more than a bookstore, right?
Well, that's sort of the height of irony, right, is that, Amazon in particular contributed to putting Borders and Barnes & Nobles and others out of business, or largely out of business, and now Amazon's opening bookstores, and you have Indigo, which I think is a cool store, but it's not all that different from a Borders or Barnes and Nobles in some level. Coming back and opening stores and gaining share. So sometimes there's this overcorrection, I think, that goes on as well. So
let's have some fun with a different way of asking you advice to retailers. Let's imagine in the envelope in front of us there's about $100 million.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not enough. Maybe it's too much. But I'm going to give you that money and say, open up a new retail concept, harnessing all the advice that you like to share and the knowledge you've learned. what would that format look like, and what would be different about it than you would have opened up 10 or 20 years ago?
So, I mean, I think my starting point, Jeff Bezos talks about your margin is my opportunity. The way I've started to talk about it is your mediocrity is my opportunity. I would try to think about, sectors where they're big sectors, but there's just an opportunity for somebody to bring something remarkable to the table. But I think to figure it out, number one, you'd have to understand customers really well.
Right.
I think you'd have to delve really deeply into the customer journey and see where there are major pain points that you could perhaps address with this new business, or I guess finding new ways, perhaps harnessed by technology, perhaps harnessed by bringing a more human emotional dimension to the table that you could really amplify. All of that has to be done in what I like to call, it's my updated term for omnichannel, a more harmonized experience. Realize that people don't go online, they live online. This channel stuff is all a bunch of nonsense, and you build it from the customer backwards, assuming that the center of the way your brand is probably going to operate is going to be on a smart device of some sort, and you just have to make that
mobile first.
Yeah. But you can be mobile first and still have a huge physical component.
So you would have physical stores with your $100 million.
I think most likely. I mean, the thing that I think a lot of time, one is the other ironic thing is, as I'm sure you know, so many of the stores that are being opened, at least in the United States, are these once digitally native vertical brands.
Sure.
So, and you've got Indochino and others in Canada as well. And
Casper, Allbirds. Yeah. I mean, we can go through the long list.
There's something like 1,000 stores that are going to be opened by these brands that are digitally native. In fact, I'll probably mention this tomorrow, but one of I will answer your question a little bit more directly, but one of my favorite conversations I had was with the CEO and founder of one of these digitally native vertical brands. It was probably 6 or 7 years ago. And I said, when are you guys going to start opening stores? And he looked at me and said, we're never opening stores. And I said, well, first of all, never is a really long time. Yeah. And secondly, I'm surprised they're in the apparel business. I said, I'm surprised to hear you say that, because I think you're going to find that there will be limits to your growth, because people will want to touch and try on your product and understand the value and so forth.
Just as catalog retail did not dominate retail
this is not,
20, 30 years ago.
Right. I don't say this because, I have some amazing insight. It's really what Williams-Sonoma and Eddie Bauer and I worked at Land's End for a while. Land's End understood. So it's just not a new phenomenon, just played out in a different way. I also think your returns will kill you. Sure. And you can lower your returns. And I think in some cases...
I love what Neiman Marcus is doing, by the way, with their small store formats. Yes. Where they're just, this is place to return or
Nordstrom.
Nordstrom, sorry, I said Neiman Marcus.
Yes.
But Nordstrom is doing in California with their smaller footprints, right?
Right. So, you lower returns. Also, in a lot of cases, cost of acquisition is lower. So anyway, spoiler alert, they have now about 80 stores. So I think it's just, there's a role for physical. Online drives in-store drives online. Is all one blur, I think, in a lot of respects. So I think chances are, whether that 100 million would go through, would start online, I'm pretty sure there would be a store component.
In the kind of time we have left, and we're going to do another conversation, you, myself, and Carl Boutet, we're going to dish on some other trends, the three of us. Maybe it's a precursor to our version of a fun podcast later, but I'm intrigued. I've been following this opening of Hudson Yards in New York, and I haven't been there myself, but I want to go. Have you had the opportunity to visit?
I have not been there. I've had a lot of conversations and seen a lot of photos, so I would say I have a semi-educated opinion about it.
Well, you just got me thinking about it when you talked about pure plays having... I think there's an entire floor
of section for those,
digital natives opening up. So that'll be my next stop in New York City. I want to see how is that the future of retail? Because I think I've read some other reports that not so much. It's I think it's one articulation, but it's a point on a journey. I think.
Well, and also I think I don't have a strong opinion one way or another whether Hudson Yards will be hugely successful, but I certainly think there are things you can do in a mall environment in certain locations, right? Like I think here in Toronto, I think Yorkdale may look different in 5 or 10 years, but I certainly think it will be around.
Right.
There's something about the mix of stores, the limited distribution, the affluence. There's factors that will work in lots of cities. Where I live in Dallas, North Park Mall is an incredibly successful mall. Some changes, but I think it'll probably look largely the same in terms of tenant mix. But then you'll have other areas, other malls, etc., that will either be completely different were bulldozed and turned into apartments or something.
Well, listen, thanks again. How do people get in touch with you or follow you? What's the best way to get a hold of you or follow you?
If you Google Steve Dennis Retail, you can find me in a bunch of places, but I'm at Steven with a VP Dennis on Twitter and Instagram and a whole bunch of other places, and my website is stephenpdennis.com.
All right, well, thanks for joining me on The Voice of Retail, and look forward to connecting and keeping in touch, and best of luck tomorrow morning on the big stage at STORE 2019.
It'll be fun.
All right, thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Lara, welcome to the Purolator Podcast Studio at STORE 2019. Thank you for joining me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me.
Fantastic. So you had a great night last night. I hope you enjoyed it. You something fun and great happened to your business, Cannabis New Brunswick. Tell me about it.
We're very excited we were up finalist for the Talent Award at the Excellence in Retailing Awards last night. And very excited just to attend and be a finalist, but we actually pulled off a win and we took home the Talent Development Award.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I from my perspective, and I've been doing some work in the cannabis space with Retail Council and otherwise, it's great to see cannabis retail put into the fold. In other words, it's part of the industry, and we welcome cannabis retailers into the industry.
And I think it's so important for us in cannabis to be taken into the fold, because a lot of what we're doing is trying to change the conversation and move away from stereotypes and stigma. So this is an important part of that.
So congratulations again, and we'll get back to a little bit more about that training and your role in it, because I'm kind of intrigued by your background and how you came to what you do today. But let's start with your journey to what you do at Cannabis New Brunswick, your personal journey about your background, and then your role at Cannabis New Brunswick. And then for the listeners, how, because Cannabis New Brunswick is provincial, but it's not, so tell us a little bit about all those things.
Yeah, so myself, I think, I've been very fortunate to have a very sort of diverse career, and it's been a combination of kind of great opportunities that have come up, and also my own, I guess what I would call what the heck strategy.
Sure.
So, over the course of my career, things have come up that maybe would feel a little strange or risky, or and I've always kind of embraced those things, and it's led me to a lot of interesting places. So I started my career with a tech startup, tiny little company that was trying to make GOS applicable to mining. Nobody was doing it.
Right.
With an office in South America, and they said, come and join us. And I said, what the heck? So I went to Chile and worked for them for a little while.
Wow.
And then I kind of took a shift and went to Kodak Canada, so from tiny startup to huge legacy organization, and kind of understood the differences and how that works. And I find it funny because whenever anyone talks about Kodak and the turn, it's the 1998-99, and that's the year I was there. So moved away from that fairly quickly. So then I moved on to lottery, which could have been a very traditional kind of job. I went into scratch ticket, like marketing and development, and then almost immediately they said, what if e-commerce, right?
Now, is this in Atlantic Canada?
Atlantic Lottery, yeah.
Right.
So again, there was this, we're going to start this crazy little group to look at e-commerce, and this is, again, late 90s, nobody was really doing much of this, and I said, what the heck, and went over there. Had a great career there. I went into e-commerce and then sort of merged that back in with branded marketing. And e-commerce has always been, and digital has always been a bit of a passion of mine. So I followed that through the different opportunities. And then about 12 years in, things were starting to settle down and become a bit more normal. And there was an agency that was doing some really kind of disrupting the agency model a bit and moving in a really interesting direction. So I thought, let's try that.
Let's try that. Good.
And then the owners of that agency founded a cannabis lifestyle company. And so that was another opportunity.
So that's your transition into the cannabis space.
That's my transition into the cannabis space. So had no experience with that sort of industry or sector before, and had spent a couple of fascinating years. And it was a magazine, a lifestyle side, so very, didn't touch the plant, not operational in that way, but a great sort of entry into the industry. And then that comes up to this current role. So, a sector coming out of 100 years of prohibition on the same day across the country, it was another one of those, you've got to try this, right? Like, you've got to be a part of it. So, and that's led me here today.
So, a couple of questions. So, you're now transitioned from a marketing role and a development role and content. You're now an operator, right? You're running Cannabis New Brunswick. Talk about that transition in both your career and your thinking about going from one role to another. Is it such a transition? I mean, you've been in some ways preparing for it your whole career.
It is and it isn't. In some ways, I think that, the senior roles I held before coming here, yes, they were marketing focused, and there was a lot of brand digital marketing strategy, but a lot of it, and a lot of the value I think I brought to this role was team development and leadership, right? Yeah. So it is about building teams, going to a new organization, building a team that was going to do something different, finding the right people, and then keeping them engaged and motivated through a lot of change. So that particular skill set is exactly, coming into something
that's
like
your wheelhouse
this
by the sounds
is
of it.
Exactly right. And then, in terms of the actual operation of the business, the retail and the e-commerce, we have a great people who know how to do that well. Right. And so we work together and we all bring the best of what we have to the organization, so it's cohesive.
Well, let's talk about Cannabis New Brunswick a little bit, because the model's slightly different. Of course, we all know in each province goes to market differently, but talk about Cannabis New Brunswick for a bit. Yeah,
so I guess we're a public model, but sort of the way we're technically set up is we operate cannabis retail for the government of New Brunswick.
So the government has the purview to distribute, sell online, and sell in stores.
Yeah, so there's the government, and then the government formed a Crown Corporation, and we work for that Crown Corporation. Okay. So we operate the retail under the provincial and federal acts. Right. So we comply with the acts, but the operation of the retail is with Cannabis Inc.
And my experience with the New Brunswick government has been very progressive. They're very progressive in much of their thinking.
Very progressive. I think, it was one of the... I think a lot of jurisdictions, when the decision was made federally to legalize cannabis, you could go either way. You could be resistant to it or worried about it, or sort of step back, see what happens. Sure. Or you could embrace it and sort of, it was going to happen, so let's do it well and let's make it an opportunity. And I think, all sorts of different areas of our government at the time worked really well together. Our economic development arm and our public safety arm and our public health arm. It was a very collaborative, how do we do this right and make it successful. So it was a huge, huge advantage New Brunswick had.
So let's talk about the business. How's it going so far? We're 6-8 months in. I saw March StatsCan numbers that are the latest, and I saw sales across the country are about $60 million in the marketplace. I mean, less in Ontario. Ontario is just getting started, so small numbers. How is it going in New Brunswick?
I think there's been parts of it that are really good. What I like to say is the parts that were within our control we're really happy with. I think everybody has heard at this point about the supply issues, and I think it's too limited to say, it's a supply issue, there's just not enough. I think maybe people underestimate the sort of sophistication of the portfolio and the different kinds of things customers are looking for.
It's complex, right?
So there's certainly some supply issues, but it's not just the volume of product, it's the breadth of product and our ability to fill portfolio gaps. And then it's not just pure supply, it's logistics, because we told our team, we're going into this, it's new, it's never been done. 24 hours after we open our doors, we'll be looking at things we need to change.
How do you forecast demand? I mean,
we don't know what we've chosen right and what we've decided right, and it's going to be, a year of continuous change and continuous improvement, no matter what we've done. As we learn what's real. And I think that applies across the industry, right? All the logistics challenges and the regulatory challenges, and how is this really going to work when we're operational? And when you have an entire sort of industry sector that goes live on the same day, and there's so much you don't know before that day, there's going to be challenges. And then I think on the supply side, they were larger than any of us expected. But we've been working really hard with our partners and new suppliers and even our stakeholder partners to try to get that stabilized as quickly as possible.
What are you hearing from the customers in terms of the model and the assortment and their in-store experience? Are they, because I travel the country and I always do store visits in a cannabis retail. It's so fun to see the different types of execution. So I'm looking forward to getting into New Brunswick. We're lots of family in the Moncton area, and it's a big Acadian festival this year. I'm kind of keen. Tell me about how you go to market in terms of how you design your stores and what the customers are saying.
I think we put a lot of thought into the in-store experience, not just the user flow and how it just how it was delivered, and I put a lot of thought and investment into our team and how they
award-winning investment
into our team. But it's really a package. We wanted the stores to feel not anything like a stereotype of what you would expect a cannabis store to look like. We wanted our team to feel professional but still friendly and comfortable, because everything we do is based in education and safety, so we wanted people to feel comfortable having a conversation, use language that's accessible and comfortable, and really have a culture that's consistent across all our locations. And I'm so proud. That's the thing I think I'm most proud of, is that experience, and we do, in spite of all the challenges, and there's a lot of complaints about this and logistical things. The feedback has been largely very positive. We do a small in-store, like a receipt survey, and we've had about 35,000 responses. And we just ask a couple of questions. Did you feel like we considered your safety? Did you feel like your experience was good? And did you feel like we understood what you needed?
Good questions.
And we are tracking above 96% positive on all three of those since opening.
Congratulations.
So, I think what we see is that the consumers that are coming to us, a lot of them have been consumers for a long time, and they are excited about a legal model, and they are being good, and they're being patient, to some extent with these logistics as we work them out.
And talk about that excitement a little bit. Are your consumers saying, I'm happy to buy it legally, whatever risks existed for that, but B, is it more about the product? I was talking to the folks from the egg growers and egg people today, and they were talking about how people want more accountability in where their product came from. And it always struck me in this conversation that in the black market, you're buying product, you have no idea where it came from. It's exactly the total opposite. People, they have more faith in the product and more confidence. Is that what you?
Absolutely, yeah. I think there's our customer base is extremely diverse, not just demographically, but sort of psychographically and sociographically. And we have different customers who are looking for different things, and their experience with us is very much based on what they're looking for. So, we certainly have a lot of consumers who, they've been consumers and probably been black market consumers, but they don't like the idea of breaking the law. They like the idea of being able to go to a store where they're comfortable, and things are, you can ask questions and you can have confidence in, who you're talking to and what you're getting.
What you're getting.
We certainly, the product safety issue is a big one, and not just is it tested and is it safe, but also are you getting the right information when you buy the product about consumption and how it works and what's best for you, and are you getting good guidance in terms of how you consume the product and what you buy. That certainly has been a lot of the feedback that we got. There's a safety, and then there's an accountability, right? Yeah. So if you're not happy with it, if something were to go wrong or the product's not what you expected, we're there.
Right.
And we're there. You have a receipt. You can come back and talk to us. That's something that I think a lot of people didn't have before when they're dealing with black market, obviously.
What are the return policies?
The return policy is, not.
What do you get, a gift card for that? No bill receipt?
Exactly.
Let's talk about moving forward in terms of cannabis edibles. So if all goes well, that legislation will be tabled before the election, the federal election happens. So we should see edibles come to market this year. And how are you, I was at a session at a conference, and they were talking about how edibles was really the next step in legitimization or destigmatization, because it gets into a different category. You talked about breadth of category. Are you looking forward to edibles? How are you thinking about it and working towards it now?
I'm looking forward to edibles, but I'm a little concerned. We had a tough rollout, and there was a lot of new things and logistics and supply issues, and this is a very different set of products. And so, I think we feel very prepared because we're very fortunate. The team that started planning for this, 3 years ago, really knew that within 1 year we were going to be in a position where we were expanded. So our stores are built to carry a SKU count that's 3 times what we originally planned for the first phase. All of our sort of display units are already pre-planned. We know how things are going to be displayed and where things are going to go. Yeah. We know what we're bringing in. I think for us, it's the timelines, right? The regulations for the next phase of products haven't been finalized yet. And we don't have a firm date on when that will happen. There seem to be a lot of focus on the manufacturing of, but not necessarily the retailing of. Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And I think that we're a little concerned. We want to manage, because we are dealing directly with customers and their expectations. We feel like we have to have a role in managing expectations. I think maybe the industry is thinking, well, there's actually 10. We talk about edibles. There's actually 10 new categories coming. Everything from topicals and creams to concentrates to there's a variety of products coming, and I think the day October 17th clicks over, our customers will expect everything to be there. And I don't know that everything will be there because most of our partners are focusing in one area or another to be responsible and to make sure they can
and the supply issues are not suddenly going to go away either.
No, and this is a different product, and I think people are managing through it well, but I think we're being very careful to manage expectations, and we're doing a lot of work. I know that we're logistically ready to offer these products, but we're doing a lot of work to make sure that we don't, again, start dealing with portfolio gaps. And we're trying to work with a lot of different partners to make sure we have as much of a breadth of offering to meet the customer's needs when they come in.
Last question for you. Any advice, or what would be your advice for retailers who are looking to transition into the cannabis industry? They're seeing cannabis industry as we all do, an exciting new industry, with great challenges, some the same, some very different. Any advice on making a transition into the cannabis industry?
I think the big one is do your homework. Don't go into it and take anything for granted. It is very strict from a regulatory perspective. It is very different in terms of the control you have of how you promote your products, how you share what your offering is with customers. A lot of the traditional tools aren't available to us.
Right.
So think all of that through and figure out how you're going to sort of set yourself up. And I think it's really important. What's been important for us is to focus on that experience. Think about the experience you want to create for customers, because that is really going to be the only tool,
it's a differentiator,
almost,
really,
that you have at your disposal, right? You can't promote, you can't market, you can't do the things that sort of we traditional marketers would normally go to. So you focus on your team, focus on the education, focus on sort of a quality experience that's accessible, and really put your effort into that, and that's a great starting point.
Well, congratulations on the success in your career and the launch of Cannabis NB. Talk about Canadian example, portaging down some rough, navigating down some pretty choppy waters, but you sound like fantastic business. I look forward to seeing it in person. Congratulations on your award last night. Once again.
Thank you very much.
That's a great testament to wow, it's a fast-moving industry, and you're still able to win an award amongst tough competition.
We were really proud to be in that group. It was a very impressive group. So.
Well, congratulations again. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for taking time.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
And great to see you, and look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks, Michael. Thank you.
Lori, welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, Michael. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for joining me. Why don't we start off by tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are, your journey, and what you do here at Purolator.
Sure, for sure. I've been with the company for 26 years. I often tell people I started when I was 12. And I actually started off working in the retail stores, so front line. And from there, I became a trainer at Purolator, and then kind of worked my way into retail management. So now I'm the director of retail, overseeing our retail locations across Canada, and it's been a fun journey.
Wow, 26 years. That's a great such a span of time for progress and how things have changed in retail. So we'll get back to that. Sure. But right now, let's talk about some great news you had last week at Retail Council of Canada's Excellence in Retail Awards. I think you walked away with a bit of hardware. What happened?
So, Michael, I have to tell you, we had a table of colleagues anticipating the announcement. Of course, we're excited, crossing our fingers we're going to win. So when they announced our name, I have to tell you, we were pretty excited.
It was a very competitive category. I was looking it up. There's a number of top-tier retail firms. I mean, just to get to that far, it was one of those categories that was had a lot of submissions, and I'm sure it was hard to judge.
Well, and it's one of those things where you look at who we were up against, Toys R Us, Sports Check, some really big brands. So even if we didn't win, the fact that we were a finalist amongst those incredible retailers was, I think, good enough. But I mean, it was just very nice that we won.
So tell me about the category, and tell me about the category, and then tell me what you what Purolator did to win.
Yeah, so it was pop-up experience and design. So one thing that we've decided to do at Purolator, I mean, we obviously talk to our customers a lot, and we really found a need for a lot of the online shopping. Our receivers wanted speed and flexibility and convenience to access their package. So what we did back in 2017, we took one truck, and we have a lot of old trucks that are retiring, and what can we do with them? So Serge Viola, our director of fleet, offered up the truck, made a suggestion, turn it into what looks like a food truck, but it's a Purolator kind of retail store on wheels.
Neat.
So we said, why not pilot in Liberty Village, high dense populated area, a lot of missed deliveries, and we did one pilot. It was such a huge success that the following year, which was last year, we rolled out 10 more across Canada. So we really kind of found those communities where people work, play, and live. They come home, they get a notice on their door. No one likes those notices, right?
And that's a tough thing in a place like Liberty Village. So for the listeners, Liberty Village, a very densely populated kind of area, lots of condos, right?
Yes.
Not a lot of sold, if any, houses in downtown Toronto.
Exactly.
So I guess the problem there is deliveries at those condos, and that's, you know, I could see that they need a pickup location.
Yeah, so you actually mentioned a key thing, and one of the successes to our mobile truck is that we also have issues sometimes delivering to the condos, to your point, Michael, where we don't have a buzzer code. So instead of bringing that package all the way back to the terminal, 15, 20, 30 minutes away, we just brought it back to the mobile quick stop truck. Our employees there called the customer, and a lot of these communities, like Liberty Village, they don't own cars,
Right.
so they can literally just walk down the street and pick up their package. So we're solving missed deliveries, also shipments without a buzzer code, entry code. We're kind of resolving them that day.
It's so interesting. Now, you mentioned you went from 1 to 10, so
Yes.
you're covering off which cities in Canada? You're covering off different cities across the country?
Yeah, different cities. So we had one in Ottawa, in the Glebe, 4 in Toronto, 4 in Vancouver, and 1 in Montreal.
So when you started the journey thinking about this mobile truck, did it strike everybody immediately as that's an amazing idea, or organizationally was it, well, let's give it a try. I don't know if this is going to work or not. What were you guys thinking? What were you thinking when?
So I have to tell you, like right off the bat, everyone was saying this is an amazing idea.
One of those V8 moments, right?
Yes,
oh my God,
it was.
Why didn't we think of this before?
Yeah, I mean, trucks, that's our biggest asset. Why not utilize them in a different way? And it's interesting because it's innovative, but when people think of innovation, they sometimes get stuck on it has to be complicated, it has to be transformational and IT heavy and so forth.
Technologically forward and all that kind of stuff.
And this is an innovative solution that was really fairly easy. I mean, there was some project details, but at the end of the day, we took what we already have, converted into something new to get our customers' packages closer to where they live.
So you launched, and you've now won an award. And
Yes.
was there some place along the journey you said, okay, what we've learned today, we're going to do different moving forward?
Yes.
Tell me about that a bit.
So, you know, we, from Liberty Village to the 10 trucks we launched last year, what we have found is that these trucks work really well in locations where there's high millennials. So that's one thing, the demographics of where these trucks work well.
Probably because that group as a whole, not to characterize the entire group, have less likely to have cars.
Exactly.
But online shoppers.
It's the online shopping as well, absolutely. We also found a lot of customers started utilizing our trucks to drop off their shipments. So we have a lot of account customers, a lot of return shipments. It's easy for them to go and drop it off at the truck. So it started off as a pickup, and now it's kind of a full service. So Michael, if you at Christmas time wanted to send a package to your mother, you could come to the truck, pay debit, credit card. We have all the packaging, and it's off on its way.
It's interesting when I think about it, because you would design the truck to be one thing, but everyone would see it and go, well, that's a Purolator, so that therefore it must be I could drop off, or I can pick up, or I can return and do all those things.
Yes.
Well, congratulations. It's a pretty neat initiative.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that the whole company's kind of rallied behind. We're going to be expanding more, probably 10 more this year, different communities across Canada. And the one thing that I like about it, Michael, is that, you know, if we start off in one community, we can also move it based on where the volume is going to be.
Sure.
And it's not just for, we're focusing on the holidays because obviously a huge increase in online shopping and deliveries. But there's also other times in the year where we can use it where there's an influx in volume.
Sure. Mother's Day, Father's Day,
exactly.
Black Friday,
Yep.
whatever. Well, that's a great segue. Let's start talking about, it's June, snapping, it's June. So retailers' thoughts are turning, of course, now to Black Friday, Cyber Monday. I was looking at Stats Canada numbers for e-commerce, and in March, the most recent stats had it up 19%, which we've seen double-digit growth year after year after year. Now, in your world, double-digit growth means a lot more packages to move.
Yes.
And tell me more about what you're seeing, what you're hearing from retailers, and how you're planning for that increase of volume, and then what you're hearing for retailers and the plan for those big peak periods.
Yeah. So the retailers really want a seamless, they want the Purolator experience to be an extension of their experience, obviously, right? So what they want is they want that first delivery. So we're going to do everything we can to get it delivered the first time. To help with the influx in volume, one of the things we're looking at is shipping direct to store. And also shipping direct to the mobile quick stop truck because it's closer to the customer. So it's also trying to maybe even avoid that courier delivery to the door, leaving it on the doorstep. We're offering our large customers ship direct. And giving that customer an option to pick up when they get home from work. So that's going to help from a capacity perspective as well.
Yeah.
And we've got quite a large network across Canada. Our corporate stores, which we're investing in, as well as our agents and partners.
And about how many corporate stores do you have?
We have 110 corporate stores across Canada, and they deal with quite a bit of volume, picking up as well as dropping off. Yeah. And they're located in the communities as well. So
behind the scenes, I know at the front of the door, the last mile, the Purolator truck is a familiar vehicle on my street, that's for sure. But at behind the scenes, there must be some infrastructure work going on to kind of keep pace with this year after year growth in e-com. I mean, it doesn't look like it's turning around. I mean, some of that percentage number, I think, is in the grocery space, which is because that's such a big category with low percentages. But the rest is just the slow or fast incremental growth. So you must be building out some kind of capacity in the back of the house to move those packages.
We have to. And I think as we continue to grow with the volume, we're looking at different evening deliveries and so forth. So and there's also a lot of, we're hiring. We need the employees, especially during those peak moments, to be able to process that volume going through our sort facilities. So there is a lot of work going on in the back end in order to help us continue to grow in this market space.
So let's talk about that peak time. What advice would you have to retailers? It's June, so it's a pretty good time to be giving advice. What advice do you have to retailers in terms of thinking about handling those peaks? Is pre-planning, it's all pre-planning, and it's all, you can't plan for everything.
Yes.
Is there anything they can reach out to you and talk about if they have any questions around? Now's the time, I would suspect, right?
Yeah, now's the time. We already have started those discussions, and I think what's really interesting is, when the retailers are speaking to their customers or they're doing that initial online purchase, is making sure that the address is correct. That's the one thing we're constantly working with our shippers, is to make sure that their database is accurate and we have the accurate information. Buzzer codes is one thing that you mentioned that before, right? Believe it or not, a lot of people forget to put that on the package, and that will delay the delivery.
And do you find that that's at the point of delivery, that's the number one challenge, is incomplete information?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, so we get, and that comes back to either our corporate stores or terminals, and then we have our staff in the back end that try to resolve that as quickly as possible to get it back out to the customer. But I think the biggest advice is to make sure you have the accurate information up front on the label for the courier to do the job. As well as making sure, as a consumer going online, are you going to be home? Is someone going to be home to accept that delivery? If not, are you okay with a signature not required? Yeah. And then the third option is having it shipped directly to your place of work, if that is an option.
So the delivery or the signature not required, that's a setting for the retailer?
Yeah, right? Some do have that, yes. And it's a setting in our system as well. With eShip Online, you can select signature not required.
Yeah. And what percentage do you think is signature required versus not required?
So it's interesting, Michael.
It depends on the client, right?
You know what? I don't have the exact percentage, but what I can tell you, every year it goes up because customers just want it left on their doorstep, whatever it is. And but we've definitely seen an increase, and it definitely helps with the success of the first attempt.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. I'm fortunate. I live in a neighborhood, and it's all good, and I get lots of different packages. I love the package at the foot of the door just come out. It's like a little Christmas present every day when you get it delivered. I just got one last week, actually, some business cards from Purolator.
Yes, by Purolator. Yes, good, excellent.
The white truck.
But see, if it wasn't, there's some shipments we can't leave on the doorstep.
Yeah.
So that's why, if you were to come home, you don't want to be really inconvenient. So what is the next best possible option? Is having a pickup location that's really close by.
And the next best is have a truck that rolls to you.
That's right.
To do that pickup location. Well, listen,
exactly.
Thanks for filling us in. Congratulations again. It's a great award.
Thank you.
Look forward to hearing more from Purolator, and let's wish us all a good season.
Yes, I think it's going to be a great season, especially for us. So I just want to thank you so much for having me on, and we're super excited about the award.
Well, thanks, Lori. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Michael.
That's a wrap on the second special RCC Store 2019 edition of The Voice of Retail. Thanks to Steve, Lara, and Lori for joining me in the Purolator Podcast Studio and beyond. If you like this podcast, you can subscribe on iTunes or your favorite podcast platform, and be sure to recommend to a friend or colleague in the retail industry. You can also ask your favorite home device, Amazon Echo, Google Home, to play the most recent edition. I'm Michael LeBlanc, founder and president of M.E. LeBlanc Company, Inc., and you can learn more about me on www.meleblanc.co or, of course, on LinkedIn. Join me each and every Friday as I interview some of the most interesting people in retail and cover off the most important stories within the Canadian retail industry and around the world. Until then, have a great week.